The Mindful Medic podcast is proudly sponsored by the Medical Benevolent Association of New South Wales, ACT. The MBA is an independent charity that has been supporting doctors in New South Wales and the ACT since 1896. They provide specialised counselling, information, referral and financial assistance to doctors and their families during times of adversity or hardship. Their aim is to provide non-judgmental support so that the doctor or family member recovers their well-being and independence and, wherever possible, returns to their vocation. Their services are free, specialised and no referral is necessary. All contact is kept strictly confidential and they are independent of any regulatory body. Hello and a very warm welcome back to the Mindful Medic podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Martin. I'm an emergency doctor, a yoga teacher, an avid runner and eternal student. And more often than not, my mind is full. In this podcast, we've been exploring broader paradigms of health, well-being, and what it takes to perform at our best. And been lucky to speak with and introduce people that certainly have inspired me in life and have really excelled in their own respective fields, sharing their knowledge, wisdom, experience, and some practical pearls that we might take with us on our journey. I hope you enjoy the show. So today I'm really delighted to introduce a special guest who certainly inspires me and who I'm very lucky to count as a friend. And I'm really feeling the remoteness of our online connection today because I reflected and the last time that we met in person and shared coffee and conversation was actually the first of this annus horribilis that we're calling 2020. And little did we know at that stage what was about to unfold this year. So we talk a wee bit about that. And the reason I wanted to have today's guest on, those of you that know me, I have quite a fascination with the art and science of performance. And I got to indulge that in episode 4 in my conversation with Dr. Stephen Hearns, my colleague who also has an interest in this area and lots of expertise. And we talked about peak performance under pressure and his book and his professional experience of implementing the art, the science, the psychology of performance in his work environment. And much of the science of performance does come from our sports science and our studies of elite athleticism. So I really wanted to bring today's guest on to give a bit of perspective from the elite athlete side. And I've also talked about what I think is the importance of coaching. And we did talk about that in episode 4. And today's guest is also a coach. So we're going to delve into that today. So before I formally introduce today's guest, I just wanted to bring up 2 things. So during the week, I was rereading a quote that I love that is attributed to Roald Dahl. It's where he talks about realizing how important it is to be an enthusiast in life. He says, if you're interested in something, no matter what it is, go at it full speed, embrace it with both arms, hug it, love it, and above all, become passionate about it. He thinks that lukewarm is just no good. And, you know, that's certainly, I think today's guest, I think of her when I read that quote, but I also think of all of the people that have been really lucky to have on this podcast, and a few that are planning to come on in the next few months. And I think that enthusiasm, that energy is something that really inspires me and others. And I think it's infectious. We know that emotions are contagious. And if we can have that kind of positive emotional contagion, then I don't think we can have enough of that in our world, particularly right now. And the other thing is that the day that we recorded this conversation, it was Are You OK Day in Australia. And the Are You OK initiative has been running for over a decade now, but has really gathered momentum, particularly in recent years. And it's a very important initiative. I mean, I do feel that every day should be Are You OK Day, but it's really our reminder to check in on each other. And I'm going to give a link to the website because beyond that, there's some really useful tools and resources there. How do you support someone if they are not okay? What are the next questions that you can ask? And where can you go to get help? And I think it's also a reminder that and we talk about this today, that, the people in your life that might seem to have it all together, they're often the ones that you should check in on too. Because a lot of people are silently struggling. And look, this was never more important at this time. And it's at this point I want to acknowledge my runners, my friends who are runners, the running community that have really been so important in my life. And, people that I've connected with, not only here in Australia, but across the world. It's like a common language. And I do feel it's a very inclusive community, and we really are pretty good at checking in on each other. And many of us run not just to keep our bodies moving and active, but, it's really, for me, strong mental and emotional support. And, it's been tough this year, and we've had to be creative in ways that we connect. So I'm delighted to say that we get to indulge in a bit of ultra running and racing and athlete mindset today. So I hope that you enjoy this. And I just want to thank you for being an important part of my life and for keeping me okay.
We talk about balance, and for me, balance was being able to do a bit of everything, because that filled my cup in different areas,
So you have just been listening to Dr. Kellie Emmerson Angel. So I was really struggling with how to introduce Kellie. She has just completed her PhD. So she's now a proper doctor. But she also got married last year to Tegan and became Mrs. Angel. Although many people will still know Kellie Emmerson, the athlete. So I hope that was okay for the introduction. Of course, for those of you in the running community, particularly in Victoria, she needs no introduction. Kellie is an elite trail runner who has many accolades to her name now. I'll run through a few of these. The list is very long. So she is the 3 times national long course trail running champion. She's also a 3 times Australian world trail running champion representative. She's the course record holder for numerous Victorian trail races. I think notably the 100 kilometres iconic Surf Coast Century in Victoria, down on the Surf Coast, where she's a PB of 9 hours and 3 minutes. She's been the first female in the Ultra Trail Australia and 150 event. And is competitive, as I say, on a world stage. And she, in the mecca of trail running that we talk about today, in the Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, she was the 5th female. So highest podium position for an Australian athlete, and that was in 2017. Kellie is also a highly respected coach of other runners here in Australia with the Up coaching team. She also teaches group fitness and body pump. Quite aside from that, Kellie, in her daytime, is a full-time occupational therapist, and she leads a team in the Yarra Valley in Victoria. And if you're not exhausted listening to this list yet, Kellie has been, as I mentioned, for the past several years working on her PhD in her spare time. And I'm delighted to say has just completed and submitted it. So huge congratulations there. She's also been pregnant in the middle of a pandemic. So I'm so delighted to have a conversation with someone that I think you're probably getting a sense of why, when I'm talking about how you can perform at your best, Kellie is an ideal person to really indulge the conversation of peak performance in not only athletics, but in many areas and aspects of her life, and has an important perspective as a coach. But this conversation, I think, became something a bit bigger, particularly with the perspective of the pandemic and Kellie being not only a health professional, but also pregnant through this period. And I think the conversation went deeper. And I think the Are You OK perspective is important. Talked last week about the messy middle and a bit about Brené Brown, and I think about vulnerability and leadership. And, Kellie really embodies a lot of those qualities that I so respect. And I think that you'll find a lot of value in this conversation today. And I really hope you enjoy as much as I did. So we were just saying that it was the 1st of January that we last met in person. I think there was a wee bit of chat over coffee, maybe of traveling and of running in beautiful places and maybe of babies. And some of that has transpired, and many other things, many other ways the world has just changed in ways we could never have predicted.
I forgot we had that conversation on the beach. There you go.
And I mean, look, every day should be Are You OK day, but how are you today?
I'm okay. I'm up and down today, trying to still navigate pregnancy and health insurance and all sorts of stuff, but all good.
Yeah, well, I want to dive into some of that. But what I wanted to say, first of all, because I think a lot of people might not know that, just casually in the background, you've been cracking out a PhD over the past couple of years. And I believe that it is fully submitted.
It is fully submitted. I'm just waiting for the final sign off. So
that is an amazing achievement.
And I think had it not been for COVID, I probably wouldn't have gotten it done. So there are definitely some silver linings from a pandemic.
But that says a lot about you, that even despite all of that, you could just carry on and get that done. Huge congratulations. And I saw your post from 11-year-old Kellie, which, if Steve Jobs could have seen it, we'll have to put a link to it. And you had this scarily accurate description of what a future computer might look like. And I mean, it was spot on. But it also made me think about your PhD, because you've clearly been studying and researching and applying use of telehealth and media and visual technological aids for the elderly in their homes. And, I think with COVID, that might be something that you might see realised sooner than later. Anything, any commentary on that?
Yeah, 100%. So, I guess when my PhD started, I was working in community rehab, in stroke rehab, and we'd get patients coming to us. We're sort of down the line after they've been through acute, they've been through an inpatient rehab setting, and then they come to us in community. And by that time, they had a pile of paper this big of exercises that they'd been asked to do at different stages of their recovery and from all their different disciplines, allied health disciplines. And I guess we wanted to find an easier way for them to keep track of those and then to be more compliant and get better sooner. It was about using smart technology and the video, just standard video functions available to see if that would help things. I guess that project started at the end of 2013.
Yeah,
we've just finished. It was a long time. It was a really practical project, and it turned out that because of COVID, to finish it off, the whole world is just seeing this increase in technology and smart technology, and I ended up having to add a few paragraphs about the pandemic into it. So it's kind of interesting to finish on that.
And do you think that'll help to get some funding in those areas and to make things happen in the nearer future? Because we know how long it takes to do
I'd like
anything.
to think so. Well, I think, I just think that we needed a really big kick up the butt to get moving on this. We've been talking about telehealth and things for years, and no one's actually, made a really good attempt at making it work well. And all of a sudden, we've had no choice in the health world but to give it a shot. So it's been really good, and it's good to reflect on some of the learnings from it. Basic things from clinicians assuming that people who are old wouldn't know how to use technology, and we've really challenged that in this environment. We've had 90-year-olds that have gone,
that's my nana.
On Zoom all the time. What are you talking about? I don't know how to do that. And it's really challenged some clinicians that have difficulty with technology themselves. So, they've been really surprised and have had to give things a go themselves. So it's been really good.
For I think this is the technology of the future, and you are making a really valuable contribution. So I think it's very exciting. So I want to move on to today's episode. I know that when I first had the idea for this passion project of mine, I had you high up on a list of someone I really wanted to have on to have a good discussion with. That I have a particular interest in, the science, a bit of art, the psychology of human performance, and got to indulge that in chapter 4 when we talked with Dr. Stephen Hearns about peak performance under pressure, and visited some of the science and some of the practicalities of how we can improve performance in high pressure situations or in any goal that we're striving to achieve. And a lot of the science does come from high-performing athletes. And you know that I have used you as an elite athlete as an example for some of my trainees when I give my little talk on Performance 101. And, I really wanted to go on and talk again about deliberate practice, about mindset, about periodization, and about all the things that you do and you coach, because you're not only an elite athlete, you're a coach. But as it turns out, you also are a mum to be in the middle of a pandemic, and you're also a health professional. So there's actually quite a few areas that I think are very relevant right now. And so I think we've broadened out the subject matter slightly, if that's okay with you. And but I'd like to start by talking about Kellie, the elite athlete. So I know many of our listeners will know you, and I'm so great that we're going to get to indulge some of our runners on the podcast today. But they might not be aware that you actually came to your sport probably what would be considered a bit later in life. And so I just wondered if you could maybe recap how you actually found your passion for running, and particularly ultra running, and that more extreme side of our sport, and found that you had a natural aptitude for it.
Yeah, sure. So I guess as a kid, I always played team sports, netball and basketball mostly. I was lucky enough to try, be able to try a million different sports, and that's sort of what I ended up with. And then it probably wasn't until like maybe even uni, I can't remember exactly how old I was, but my cousin at the time was doing Run for the Kids and asked me to do it with him. So I'd never run that far in my life, but why not? Give it a shot. And we had a great time when I finished, and I just had such a fun day out. So,
and that was about 15K, the 15K.
Yeah, about 15K.
And you just went at it. Had you had any prior?
I don't remember training or anything. I don't remember doing anything. I'm not sure. The one thing I do remember was running beside this older bloke who was a Spartan. I think he
Mm.
did his 10 Melbourne marathons, and yeah, he was giving me lolly snakes along the way, and it was so nice to have a chat to someone, and we had a great time. So I figured if I could run 15K, I could probably run a half marathon. So I signed up for Run Melbourne after that, and joined a local running club called Running in the Burbs, and they were the I guess sponsored club to train towards Run Melbourne. And so I started running with them, and that kind of changed my life from there. I think I probably ran the distance in training with them accidentally. I just was plodding along talking to people and realised that I could run a lot further than I thought. And never looked back from there. So that sort of a half marathon went to a marathon, and then some friends from there encouraged me to do Oxfam Trail Walker with them. And so we signed
and
up.
And just tell people how far that is.
That's 100K.
Just casually.
So we're going to run, walk it, and we signed up to a couple of longer races as a team leading up to that, and just really loved getting out in nature and in the bush, up the mountains, and I was pretty hooked after that.
And at what point did you realise that, it was more than that you actually had some real ability? Did it hit you, did it take a while to kind of...
It's a good question. I haven't really thought about the actual moment, but I guess I can probably thank the Trails Plus races like for that journey, because there was a certain period of time where I just started doing some of those races in that series, and all of a sudden started to do all right at them, and started competing a little bit more and getting a bit serious. And I think one of the main ones I remember was the Vic Trail Championships, which would happen to be around the Tan. It was 13 laps of the Tan. And I had
my feelings about laps.
And I was so determined to give it a good go, and I got really sick that week with the flu. And I tried to rest as much as possible, but I was determined to still to still run the race. And I think I made it to the finish line within 5 centimeters of the finish line, and just collapsed. My body had given it everything, and it did not have one little bit of energy left. But I won, and I proved that I could, to myself, that I could do it. And I think that probably really showed me what my body was capable of, and my mind was capable of.
Yeah, I know, and I think you've just given us a wee bit of insight into, into Kellie and the as you say, mental and physical kind of aptitude and the mantras, because you were determined there. There wasn't really going to be much that was going to stop you.
Yeah.
Have you so did it change when that evolution to becoming more competitive? Did you start to think about how when you're a full-time occupational therapist, I think you were also teaching body pump at that point as well. I don't know if you were coaching, we'll move on to that, but and I think you were probably already starting to think about your research. How did you start to think about how can I fit all of this in, or did you have any particular strategies, and how did you manage?
Yeah, no, it's not something that I really thought about. It was just something that I did, and I wasn't really willing to compromise on anything. I wanted to do everything. You sort of, over time, you learn that you can't do everything. But, for quite a while there, I made it work. And it was, I think probably my whole life, even back when I was playing netball or basketball, I probably could have been quite good at either of them. I played rep basketball, and I probably could have played rep netball if I wanted to, but I could never choose. I was someone that always just liked doing everything and spreading the love, So I think if I made the decision to stop and focus on one thing, I could probably be an expert at one thing. But I've never liked doing that. I've liked doing a bit of everything and not being, being okay at everything, but not the best, if that makes sense.
I'd argue that you're an expert in a few areas, Kellie. You are one of the best ultra endurance athletes and competitive on a world stage. So, and you've just completed a PhD.
Yeah, I don't know. But you just like, it was, for me, it was just squeezing things in and, doing a lot of things and keeping some routine up was always really important to me. And then having, we talk about balance, and for me, balance was being able to do a bit of everything, because that filled my cup in different areas,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you came across the important point there is when you said that you ran and you finished the event and you'd given everything. I think there's this idea that, when you are performing at a very high level, that you're doing it easier in some way, but I think you're doing it just as tough. And this idea of, balance, but actually to perform at that level, they talk about embracing the suck. Are there moments when you think, oh, why am I doing this? And, this is hard or too hard?
Yeah, 100%. And
how do you navigate that?
A good example is training through winter. I hate training in the rain and the cold. Living in Melbourne, it's really not fun doing really long sessions in the rain sometimes. But I keep going back. Like I keep, some years I've said, I'll do an international race at the start of the year this year, so that I don't need to train through winter and I can chill out. But I keep going back to UTMB, which happens to fall end of August, start of September, which means I have no choice but to train properly right through the middle of Melbourne winter. And I guess, strategies for that are lining, I'll often line people up for every night of the week to make sure that I've got a friend to run with, to keep me motivated and keep me enjoying it. I got a spin bike that helped me through one winter. Just mixing it up and being able to train indoors when I really didn't feel like going out. But routine is the main thing. Sticking with routine.
Oh, and you just mentioned UTMB because I got a nice friendly Facebook reminder of 2017 and some beautiful pictures that just wanted me to go back to the mountains. But, I was there that year when, so for people that maybe don't know, anybody who runs in part of our running community will know UTMB, which is one of the most famous 100-mile ultra endurance marathons. 171 kilometres, over 10,000 metres of climb, traversing 3 little countries. And Kellie was the fastest Australian athlete to finish that. And was it 28 hours, I think, and 5th female overall in 2017?
Yeah.
And I mean, and I remember you saying at parts of that you couldn't eat, you couldn't drink, you couldn't feel your fingers. I mean, you've gone from heat to frost to snow to blizzards. Is that your most memorable event?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What did you learn from that experience?
So many things. What my body and mind was capable of. I'd never run more than Oxfam at that point, but more than 15 hours. So I had absolutely no idea what to expect. And it was all this big unknown. So just going into something and giving something a crack that seemed impossible. And getting through all of the challenges of that in a race that long. There's just so many different variables that you can't control. So you try and control what you can. And like I said, I just learned that my mind is a lot stronger than I even thought before. And to be able to run someone down at the end when I thought I'd already given everything, I managed to run a girl down in the last K. And, I'll never forget that moment.
Yeah, you've become quite famous for what I like to call the Kellie sprint finish. I find it incredible you could be going that fast at 3 30-minute Ks at the end of a 100-mile race. Just incredible.
Yeah, I still have no idea either.
Yeah, I mean, the human body is amazing. And I know you're only too acutely aware of that as you grow another human being at the moment. And speaking of that, I wanted to talk about the importance of your significant other in your journey. You have a great partner in training and in life, and I see you work so well together. Do you think that that's an important component of, I think that you would go on and do everything that you're doing anyway, but I really think that enhances, both of your performances.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't do it without his encouragement and support. Considering how busy I have been from day to day, having someone that understands that it makes a huge difference. Partners in the past did not understand that, and they were always probably telling me to quit something because it was too much. Whereas Tegan has helped me grow.
You've got an encourager.
Yeah.
I have to mention Kang. He's one of my colleagues who likes to run, and he actually asked me a question that I don't know the answer to, and I think the answer is no. Have you ever not finished anything? Right? Yes, I was right.
Touch wood. Don't jinx me now.
No. But he wanted to know. Yeah, so I think you probably answered that question just when you're deep in it. And what has been your most challenging event that you race wise? That's probably that where maybe the outcome wasn't as you expected.
Yeah, it's probably still at one of the UTMB events. Probably going back last year was probably one of the most challenging. So 2018, I couldn't bring myself to do it again because I'd done so well that I knew I would compare.
So I did 100 miles.
Yeah. So I did TDS instead, which is the slightly shorter version, but quite hard and remote. And then last year I finally conjured up the confidence, I guess, to give it another go, the 100-mile, and still knowing that comparison was going to be there on my shoulder somewhere. And things definitely didn't go to plan at all. I think I ran really well in the first 10Ks, and then the minute we started climbing, for some reason, my shoes were giving me a lot of grief, a lot of foot pain that I'd never experienced before ever. And then I started having UTI symptoms really quite early on. And I knew straight away, I knew that was not going to be a good sign and not going to set me up well. And by the time I got to Cumaea in Italy, that was about the 80K mark, I was peeing Coke-coloured urine. And that really freaked me out because, when you've trained so hard for something and you want something so bad, all of a sudden you need to have some self-control, be able to make some smart decisions when you've been running already for a very long time through the night and, make a call on what to do. And so, probably the smartest option would have been to pull out and look after my health, but I don't really know how to do that. But I think I did, I don't think I was stupid about it. I made sure that I pulled right back. I had to slow down. I had to drink a lot and try and clear it out. And that's what I did. And so that enabled me to finish the race. I still finished in the top 20. And so, I've still got to be happy with that, but it's hard to, when, you can do a lot better. It's hard to accept that at the same time.
Do you think that taught you more than the 2017 race?
Oh, probably. Yeah. You've got to have the ups and downs, and you've got to experience it all to become a better athlete and keep growing. So yeah, it was still a great experience. And, this time the weather was actually really nice. So I got to enjoy the views and, see a completely different side of the mountains that I'd seen or not really seen in 2017 because it was
to be horrific. Continued. We'll see what the next couple of years brings. I'd like to go on to talk about coaching, but before we do that, and I know I just wanted to do a quick fire. I've had quite a few people with some questions for you. So what is your favourite training session?
Probably something simple like a monofile leg.
Yep.
Short and sweet.
Favourite pre-race ritual?
Pre-race.
Anything? Vegemite toast?
Not really. Yeah, a bit of toast in the morning. Nothing too exciting.
Post-race?
Beer and pizza.
We've talked about techniques that you use. Do you do any self-talk, or is there anything that you do mid-race when you're really deep in it, or do you count? Or
Sometimes. I'm probably not a huge person for that, but a few mantras like, hike the shit out of it. Just, people think you have
I've
to
quoted that one.
these these mountain races. It is a hiking race, and you've got to, as long as you can hike well, you can get to the top and run down the other side and make the most of your energy.
Any wish list events, any dream races?
Yeah, so I guess obviously we're going to come to this conversation, but Western States is definitely on there. Finally got an entry into that this year, and then 2 weeks later found out I was pregnant.
And it didn't happen anyway, which has been interesting. So that gives you 2 years of a bye, does it? Or
the fair for up to 3 years.
Yes, yeah. Excellent. Okay,
yeah.
So we'll be able, I want to go into that. So you are a coach of other runners. At what point did you actually decide to take on or become and train and take on a coaching journey, and why did you embrace that on top of your other commitments?
Yeah, I'm not sure how long ago it was. I guess I started teaching body pump probably about 10 years ago, maybe more. And that was probably the start of my coaching journey. I used to go to the gym all the time when I was at uni, and really loved it. Had a great group of friends that used to go, and we'd do a few classes in a row. And I guess that was the next step for me, was being able to instruct other people. And one of my main decisions for doing that too was because I was a terrible public speaker at the time. And so I threw myself in the deep end. I had no option but to stand on stage in front of people wearing a microphone. And it really helped, I think, in that area. And so from there, once I started running in the Burbs, there were a few people there that were coaching for 2 times you. And I think they needed someone to fill in, or they were opening up a new store and needed a new coach. And so, I put my hand up and gave it a go. Did the a basic rec running course with Athletics Victoria, and started coaching out at Malvern, and then shifted over to the Camberwell store, where I built up a group there, and we had a great time. We'd run 3 times a week. And I'm not there anymore, but to this day they still run together, which is really, really nice.
There's
to
a lot
in the community that we.
And the thing that I pick on there is that you saw, look, this is something that's going to be hard. This is going to be challenging, but it's this can-do attitude. I should do that because that's going to be tough. Let's see.
Yeah, why not? So it sort of went from there, and then. As I became more competitive, I got a coach. So I started being coached by Brendan Davies, and that sort of evolved into me being the Melbourne-based up coach down here.
So what do you think you can talk about your own personal experience, but what do you think are the advantages of having a coach, and who should consider having a coach?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of advantages. For me, it was having someone who could push me, and challenge me in other ways that I didn't know how to do myself. It's also about creating some structure, and because I was so busy, I couldn't see how I could possibly come up with ideas and things myself or stay motivated to do something. So having a plan in advance and having someone else tell me what to do just took a bit of a weight off. I could just come home from work and I knew exactly what I had to go out and do that night. But me now as a coach myself, I see the benefits of some of those things still, but also in pulling some people back too, because there's a lot of people that do too much and don't know when to stop, or overdo the speed work and things. So it works both ways. It's building people up and giving them some structure, but also pulling some people back.
So how would you describe your coaching style, and how important is it for people to find, or thinking about a coach, find someone whose style works well with them? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I definitely think that you need to find a good match. I guess my style it comes from my background as an occupational therapist. So as an OT, we're very holistic, and we look at someone's whole world and whole life, as opposed to just looking at numbers. And so I like to think that I bring all those qualities from as an OT to my coaching, and try and make sure that we're accounting for everything else that's happening in a person's life, looking at things like their running age and their previous fitness and their family life, and have they got all these kids that they're running around after, do they work full time? There's so many aspects and variables to consider. Whereas if I get someone who comes to me that is all about the stats and numbers, I will probably push them on, because that's that's definitely a part of it, but it's not that's only a small part of it for me.
Yeah, and I think the best coaches will understand that and will refer on if they feel that their clients are going to be better served elsewhere. I mean, that's the confidence and courage of an excellent coach. I'm fascinated on how this translates. You and I are both health professionals, and I think no matter what discipline you're working in, many of the same habits, techniques, tools to mastery apply, and we have the science to back this up. And I just wondered, I feel quite strongly we should be training people to coach and have coaches in my professional space. And I wondered if you had any experience of that in your working environment, and what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I guess so. Now I'm team leader of the health and ageing team in community health out in Healesville, and so I look after about 25 staff. And I think definitely there's an aspect of coaching, and that was definitely some of the questions that came into my interview recently for that position. And I think it's really important that we try and allow time and space to do that. I think the problem is time and space to do that.
Yeah.
In public health, we're always so busy, we're always so short-staffed, and it really, it comes down to numbers and looking at the stats and have you seen the right amount of clients that you needed to today. But sometimes I think it's really important to take a step back and actually allow protected time to learn and engage with other with colleagues to be able to practice and to learn from one another. Definitely.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think my experience with this is that when it's happened, it's been people doing it because they're interested, they're passionate about it, and they do it on their own time. And yeah, to actually formalize that and put structure around it and make it appropriately remunerated, and actually train trainers as well. But yeah, that's my tuppence. So I wanted to move on and again put a bit of context around where we are right now in terms of running and our running community, because I know that like me, even though you're competing on a world stage, both of us, it's the people, it's the community, it's the connections that go with our running that really motivate us and that keep us going. I know for me, those connections are so important. And, some days that's my joy in life. It's my reason to get up in the morning. And unfortunately, we've faced a lot of race cancellations, a lot of limitations on where we can run, who we can run with, how far we can run. And there's even been, some unpleasant backlash against runners, and should you wear a mask, should you not wear a mask? That study that they published, I think was the Belgian study, although I think cyclists maybe came off worse. And I'm conscious that many of us do run for more than just our physical health. And so I'm curious about, first of all, how that has affected you as an athlete, but also how it's affected the runners that you coach. And have you had to change, the way that you engage with them through this period? How have you kept them motivated or bolstered them in times of challenge for the running community?
Yeah, so it's been interesting for me. It's kind of a bit of a double whammy because I'm pregnant as well. So, automatically having started growing a baby, I've had to adapt things along the way, and I've had to shorten things and restrict things. So in that sense, the pandemic on top of that, it was probably not as bad, because I'd already had to make some changes.
Yeah, and we might, we could maybe go into that now if you want to, first of all.
Yeah, sure.
Because and I know that right at the very beginning, you work in health, you're a scientist, you're a researcher, and I think you and I both had a wee look at the literature, just, what is the evidence base for exercise and pregnancy, and there's some good general guidelines with cautions and caveats, but there's not very much when you really look to that elite end of the spectrum. And I think everything is relative, and when you come from running 170 kilometer races and maybe doing 100k a week, to then step down and say, moderate exertion, 150 minutes, throughout the week, maybe as a resistance, and none of this. And then you realize there's not a lot of research out there, because research on female athletes is already lacking, let alone pregnant female athletes. So and I think the other thing is that you've got such high expectations of what you can do with your body, I imagine. I want your personal take on this. How have you navigated it, and what kind of compromises have you had to make along the way?
Yeah, so it's been quite challenging knowing what's safe and what's not, and what's acceptable and what's not, and then just knowing in myself what I think I can do and what I shouldn't. It started off with going to see my GP and trying to get some answers straight away, and he automatically said, "Oh yeah, you can do some short runs. I'm happy for you to do a couple of short runs." I said, "Define short, because I've just finished an 80k training weekend up at Apollo Bay, along the Great Ocean Walk Trail and up and down a Wild Dog Creek Road." And so 30 minutes 3 times a week wasn't really going to do it for me at that point. And so then it was navigating whether I was going to go public or private, and trying to navigate the system, but found an obstetrician who had done a little bit of research into exercise and was also a runner herself. And
Great.
I felt confident going with a doctor that had those qualifications, I guess, and also being female too. I'd had a male GP my entire life. Yeah. So it was nice to actually have a female who'd experienced it all.
Yeah.
So I guess I took guidance from her, and I went and saw a pelvic floor physio, and had some proper assessments done, and joined a antenatal exercise class. And so I tried to just speak to different people, yourself included, to see what you had learned on your journey. And just collected all the evidence that I could find, I guess. And I guess I've slowly adapted over time. I've maintained some running still up to now, just at 37 weeks. It's definitely more of a walk run now. But it's been nice to still be able to do that, because when that's what you're used to doing, it's really strange not being able to do that anymore. But also my husband bought me a smart trainer when he found out that I was pregnant, and I bought a bike, and so that's been really good for some cross training as well, being able to just get on the bike. And
I think you can do virtual races.
That it would actually be the golden piece of equipment that everyone needed this year. But, that worked out very, very well as well.
So there's 2 things I wanted to pick up on. So first of all, just the pregnancy experience through COVID, because we know working in our environment how relatives have not been able to see patients. There's been so many changes to the way that we work, and obviously that has affected your obstetric journey as well, in terms of who can be in the room with you. And I mean, that must have been very tough so far, and I can't really imagine. I know another few friends who've gone through this, and patients. Any kind of feedback from yourself?
Yeah, look, it's been a really interesting journey. Like, it's it's quite challenging navigating a first pregnancy normally, let alone in the middle of a pandemic. So, luckily at the start, I was able to have dinner. I remember having dinner with my family and being able, I think it was Mum's birthday in February, and being able to tell my family all together. And so that was really nice. And then it all went downhill from there with the rest of the world. But I think I was doing okay initially until the first real scan at about 11 weeks. And that was when, that's when you first get to see the baby on the screen. And we went in knowing that there had been a few changes with what was allowed. But, walked in and the lady said, "Oh, didn't you receive the text message?" And I said, "No." She said, "Oh, no, we sent you a text message yesterday. I'm really sorry, but your partner's not allowed to be here." And that was really devastating. And, I held it together and I was okay. And then she got really upset and started crying.
Oh, no.
She said, "I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's not the way it's meant to be." And then it got me going. So, it was interesting just to see how that affected other people as well. And it was lucky, he was allowed to quickly sneak in at the door and stand at the door for a minute or two and have a look. But that's sort of been the journey from there. It's sort of navigating a lot of things on my own and him supporting as much as he can. But luckily, with the obstetrician appointments, it's sort of I only ended up having to have one video consult, and the rest have been face-to-face. But we'll get the phone out and FaceTime with Tegan there so he can be part of it as well.
Fantastic.
Because, it's really interesting. It's definitely a two-person journey. You both made the baby. It's not just all about the female, and wanting to include him as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think the fact that your ultrasonographer there was also feeling that, because I think that's what many healthcare workers are also, they're feeling for families and patients, because that interaction that's so important is not happening.
Yeah, definitely.
There was a really powerful post that you made through Hoka, I know one of your main sponsors, and there was two things that you brought up, and I think it was this idea of judgment and vulnerability. And so firstly, as a pregnant athlete and pregnant runner, and I actually had a conversation this week with two of my colleagues who ran quite late into their pregnancies, and also felt that there was this, as you say, judgment. You think of it's Alicia Morano, the Olympian and US track runner. I always remember her running quite towards the end of her third trimester and racing and competing, and how that was obviously newsworthy. And I actually also brought me back to when I was at cross country at school. We had a French teacher who would take the female athletes out, and she ran till quite late in her second trimester, maybe early third trimester. I remember it being notable at the time. I thought, this is wonderful. But that would have been quite a while ago. So that would have been 20 years ago. Actually 25 years ago. So I'm just, oh no. Do you think it's still taboo?
Yeah, look, I don't think so. I didn't think it was that big a deal. But it's been interesting. Just it probably started running with a mate around Lilydale Lake, and I was sort of in front of him. This was probably for a couple of months probably. I was running in front of him, he was behind. And so I'd run past people, and then he'd hear them after me. You'd see their reactions and hear them after I'd already run past. And that was really interesting to see how many people commented or made a face like, "Whoa, what's she doing? She's just on her third lap around the lake,"
Yeah.
And that was still quite early on. Like, I would have been showing, but that was interesting. And then
I was celebrating you running a sub 20 minute 5K at, was it 20 weeks?
That was 18 weeks. I think I really surprised myself. But then where it really became significant was a few of the Victorian ultra runners had decided to put a relay together. So that this was in between the two lockdowns, where we were still allowed to travel a little bit. And the plan was for everyone to run in their own suburb and meet each other in this huge map. So it's still going to happen at some point, which is it was a really nice way to bring the community together and in this current time. And Jess, who sort of was one of the main coordinators, let me know that the Age had jumped on board. They were really excited by it and wanted to interview someone. So I was like, sure, no worries, I'll do it. And so I interviewed on the Friday night and just on the phone, and we had a long conversation, and she said, oh, okay, so here you're going to have a baby. I said, yep. She said, how long have you got to go? I said, I'm currently 30 weeks. So, hopefully about 10 weeks to go. She said, oh, is that going to affect your ability to do the photo shoot? I said, no, I'm still running. Like, I'm still very much part of the community. It's still, a really important part of me and part of my identity. And that was sort of the end of it. And then straight after the interview, I got a phone call from Jess saying, look, really sorry, but she doesn't want you to be involved. And, I'd spent all this time preparing for it and making sure I understood everything. And she didn't have the nerve to even say it herself. She didn't include me in the article at all. There was nothing after that. And it made me really angry because, it was the Age. It was a big, well-known newspaper. And just because I was pregnant, it wasn't going to put out a good message to the community, apparently, which I think is the wrong message, because all of the research shows that we should be active during pregnancy. And, I wasn't going to go and run a marathon. I was going to run a couple of Ks in my suburb. I found that really, really interesting.
Yeah. And, that this is not the first time that we've seen this in recent years. And, it's happened across the board so to some very prominent athletes like yourself. But as I said, when you're featuring on the podium in Western States in a few years, we'll have the last laugh. But and I think it also, so the other thing about that is I think you are someone who sees the glass, half full. I think I've seen you in anything that you've tackled in your life. You just do it with enthusiasm and a smile. But I think it's, when we see people who do excel at, the early athletes or, in leadership roles, we just assume that they just have it all together and they're just getting on with it. And I think that you forget that, you're human, as you said yourself, and you probably said you are a bit robotic, and I think I can identify with that a bit. I found it really hard to just sit and stay and just be in it, because I'd rather just go and forget about it. And I feel this is so important because you are an advocate, you're a role model, but it's essential that we look after the special people in our lives, like yourself. And, I want to thank you for calling this out, putting it out there, and also showing your own vulnerability, because I really think that speaks to people, but it's also incredibly hard.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it's not something that I do a lot.
No.
So, at the time, just seeking a bit of different feedback from different people, I was like, no, actually, some of these things are not okay, and I think they need to be called out sometimes.
No, I completely agree. And I want to thank you for doing that, though. And as you say, you are going through pregnancy, and, you're on a hormonal roller coaster on top of all of that.
Learning all about those hormones.
So I did want to go back to the coaching and just talk a bit about how you've been supporting your athletes through this challenging time, any changes that you might have made to their programs, any tips that you might have for runners who are struggling with motivation right now.
Yeah, so I guess I coach in two ways. I've got a group that I coach, and then I've got quite a few individual athletes. With my group, we had to stop, obviously because of all the restrictions in Melbourne. And through the first lockdown, we managed that by just, I gave them different challenges to do every week. running, the border of their postcode, running every street, just came up with different creative ideas. And we had a lot of fun with it. And they quite enjoyed it and enjoyed having different challenges to try. And then we were able to recommence with restricted numbers, which was a little bit challenging at times, but we got there. And then all of a sudden we went down into lockdown number 2. So I think it was a bit more challenging this time around. People weren't as motivated, and even I was probably a bit exhausted too. So I wasn't as proactive in giving them different challenges. And then halfway through realised that it would be nice to do something. So we started doing some strength sessions together via Zoom over the last month, which was really nice. And then my individual clients, there's been a real mix. Some of them have been really motivated and enthusiastic to use it as a chance to focus on a particular goal, like, improving their 5K time, for example. Whereas others have been so snowed under by their kids and working from home and all of those other things that come along with it, that it's been more about just trying to be a support for them and trying to keep them moving and keeping them active. So, one of them, I realised it was really having trouble getting out at all because she was there trying to look up, teach her kids during the day, then of an evening trying to still continue their extracurricular activities such as, playing musical instruments and doing whatever else. And so I ended up lending her my spin bike because, she just needed something that she could do then and there and not have to go anywhere. And that worked out really well. So that was a great option for her. For some of the others, they also bought smart trainers. So twice a week since the start of the first lockdown, we started some Zwift sessions twice a week.
Those look like fun. I don't like bikes, but actually those look like fun.
So I've kept that up, and I still did another one this morning. 6 a.m. on a Monday and Thursday, and we've been riding together, and it's been so good, just for all of us, I think, myself included, not just as their coach, but as their friend, just to have some structure and we have some great conversations, and we just sit there and talk the whole time on the message. But yeah, that's been good, and it's been great having a way of cross training, I guess, and not burning themselves out. Because for some people, they do want to just ignore it and run and run and run, whereas we're not training for anything. So, and the goalposts keep changing. So where we thought that all these races that got postponed might happen, we didn't know. I sort of still needed to make sure that they were prepared in some way for them, but knowing that we couldn't put all your eggs in one basket, because if it didn't happen, they were going to be pretty devastated as well. So, I think the main strategy has been trying to introduce some cross training, do some strength training, and remembering that just because we're restricted to 1 hour of exercise at the moment, but that's okay. That I wouldn't necessarily be programming a heap more anyway. And just getting people to accept that and understand that, and
great. And I believe you're officially on maternity leave now.
I am now.
What is your plan for the next couple of weeks? Are you going to be able to take any time out for you?
Very good question. I'm still not actually in my own home because we decided that it would be a great idea to renovate. And so that's been going for a long time.
I didn't know what you meant yesterday when you said you're still not home. I wasn't really...
So this is not my house. This is my mum and dad's house.
The kitchen looks great, though. I thought I didn't realise you'd more renovations.
So we did both bathrooms. It's ended up being the entire house. But anyway, again, the silver linings of a pandemic, we've been able to save money on travel and put that towards the house. So it'll be good once we move back in, hopefully tomorrow. And I don't know how it got to Thursday already. I feel like I haven't really used my first week off all that wisely, but it's just catching up on a million different things. So hopefully next week when I'm back in my own house, I can chill out a bit and read a book.
It just reminded me of, I mean, I think I was going through all the things that you did. And we had a conversation once that you said, you said it, if I was just doing, training to be an elite athlete, and if I wasn't just, I'm using inverted commas, if I didn't, have my full-time job and this, and I probably would achieve less. And I find that really interesting. That I don't know. I think you're motivated by having so much on the go.
Yeah, 100%. And I've thought about that this week because, you don't get anywhere near as much done when you don't have structure, I think. So it's okay to not have structure. It's important to accept that sometimes too. But that definitely drives me and keeps me, ticking things off.
Yeah, and I think I like structure as well, but I also like spontaneity, and I love that having my suitcase always half unpacked, that I have actually had to eventually halfway through this year just put away. And it's been a bit disappointing to do that, but
and I guess that's the thing at the moment too, because we can't do anything. We're so restricted here in Melbourne still. The only thing that we've got is just having some structure and routine to get ourselves through. So I look forward to the day when we can go out for brunch and go to the beach or do something else, get back up on the mountain.
I'm depending on that. By the 1st of January 21, I'm going to be down having coffee with you again in Melbourne. I'm determined. And your little man, that's what I'm holding out for. I wanted to finish with the 3 questions I've been asking all of my guests, because it does involve a wee bit of you and self-care. And I think that these things are important. But just the first question, which is quite broad, but do you have a definition of health, a working definition for yourself, what good health means?
Yeah, look, I think it's health to me is just being fit and well and able to have the confidence to be able to pick anything up at any time. If someone said, let's go climb a mountain, I'm okay and good to go. And yeah, both physically and mentally, being happy and strong, and all of those things.
And if you were to design at the moment, no lockdown restrictions, an ideal self-care Sunday, what would it look like?
Probably be relaxing on the beach. Maybe going for a hike first and then relaxing on the beach. Yeah, we didn't quite get the baby moon or anything
up here.
Yeah, I'm hanging out for that.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of reschedules for next year for sure. And I know you've already mentioned a couple of these things, but when things are more challenging, which they are all the time at the moment, what are your key kind of go-to strategies during life in general?
Yeah, for sure. I think just making time to communicate with friends. I think particularly during the first lockdown, I found that I was almost more connected to some people than usual because we didn't have to make a time amongst busy schedules to catch up, and meet somewhere. We could just actually pick up the phone and call each other, which I found really interesting. That it took something like this to make that happen, because we think that we always have to meet up face to face, but it's not the case.
I completely agree.
On the phone, and so it's catching up with friends, it's talking things through with people, and doing some exercise, but trying to catch up with family where possible. I think that's been really hard at the moment, is not being able to see all family and friends, but finding other ways around it. And
thank you for making time today to come on and have this conversation. I really wish we were doing it in person. I think you're exceptional, and I feel very lucky to have you in my life as a friend, but also as a role model. And I do find you very inspiring. And I think you're a very important member of not only our running community. I'm sure a lot of people will be encouraged and inspired by the conversation today. And I want to wish you all the joy and luck in the world as you go on to your next ultra endurance feat, as you bring new life into the world. I think you and Tegan are going to be fantastic parents. I'm just so sorry that you're having this experience in the middle of a pandemic, but oh, what tales you'll be able to tell your son one day.
I know. I'm never going to forget what year he was born, that's for sure.
No, no.
I thought I might actually sit down and write a letter to him and explain what this year has been all about.
Definitely do that and keep it just the way your teacher encouraged you to keep that note, because that was powerful. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Kellie Emmerson Angel. I think you'll agree with me that Kellie is most certainly one of life's enthusiasts. As I was reflecting on our conversation, I made note of some of the behaviours, the attitudes that she makes mention of here and cultivates. And these would find themselves at home on any reference on the science of performance. So again, enthusiasm, joy, gratitude, sheer determination and grit. She emphasizes that sometimes balance means embracing the suck, but also for her, keeping her life well-rounded and ensuring that she can fill her cup in many areas. She emphasises the need to have critical friends in your life, to find a tribe, to engage and stay connected and support one another. For her, routine is important, but acknowledging that you need to make space for spontaneity. And I think, again, we mentioned Brené Brown in the last episode, but Brené talks about, the courage and the importance of vulnerability in leadership. And I think it is the harder thing to embrace our softer sides. But as an important role model and advocate, I feel that Kellie navigates that line very well. And I found another quote by Roald Dahl. And I think, again, on this day that we had the conversation, it spoke to me. So he says that he found it impossible to talk to anyone about his problems. And he couldn't face the embarrassment. And anyway, he says, I lacked the courage. He said any courage he had was knocked out of him when he was young. But now, all of a sudden, I have a sort of desperate wish to tell everything to someone. So I hope that this will encourage you to pick up the phone and connect with someone important in your life today and check in on them. But also to reflect on the things in life that bring you joy and that bring out your enthusiast. I look forward to joining you next time. The MBA New South Wales ACT does wonderful work for those of our colleagues who are, at this very minute, experiencing a hard time. One way you can show you care about doctors' welfare is to go to their website, www.mbansw.org.au, and donate today. Knowing that their colleagues' care is a big part of these doctors' recovery, so please be part of the solution. All donations are tax deductible. If you can, please consider a monthly donation, as even small amounts collectively will allow them to plan their growth to support the increased demand.